settled slowly over the town like smoke from a dying fire. The youth centre across the road was alive, with noise music blasting from rusty speakers, boys arguing over football, girls laughing loudly near the roasted corn stand. Motorcycles sped past carelessly, their headlights flashing through the gathering darkness. But beside all that life stood the cemetery, quiet, still, watching. The old iron gate leaned slightly open, as if someone had forgotten to close it years ago. Tall grass danced around crooked tombstones, and the wind carried the faint smell of wet earth from inside. Directly beside it stood the bus stop, a long queue of tired passengers stretched under the flickering streetlight. Workers returning home, students clutching bags, women with market baskets. Everyone impatient, everyone distracted. No one noticed the strange thing standing at the front of the line. Boy, tall, beautiful, too beautiful. She wore a pale blue gown that moved softly, although the air around her was still. Her skin glowed unnaturally smooth beneath the weak streetlight, and her long braids rested perfectly on her shoulders. Calm, silent, motionless, people noticed her beauty, yes, but somehow their minds refused to stay on her for too long. Every time someone tried to look closely, they would suddenly forget why they were staring. A little boy beside his mother pointed at her. "Mama," he whispered nervously, "that auntie no day blink?" His mother slapped his hand down immediately, face front. The boy obeyed, but he kept trembling. A cold wind suddenly swept through the bus stop, not from the road, from the cemetery. The leaves behind the iron gate rustled violently, then stopped completely, as if something inside had become aware of them. Far away, thunder rumbled softly. The bus finally appeared at the end of the road with its headlights cutting through the darkness. Everybody sighed in relief. Thank God! At last! The old yellow bus dragged itself toward them with a loud screech. The driver looked exhausted already. The conductor hung halfway outside the door, shouting destination names carelessly. "Town! Town! Upper Junction! Last bus!" Before anyone could rush forward, Boy entered first, smoothly, silently. The conductor opened his mouth to ask for her fare, then froze. For one strange second, his eyes became empty. He simply stepped aside, allowed her in. Boy walked slowly down the aisle and sat in the very front seat beside the window. Still calm, still expressionless. One by one, passengers filled the bus completely. People squeezed themselves into tight corners. Babies cried. Sweat mixed with dust. Arguments started over seating space. Normal evening chaos. But throughout it all, Boy remained perfectly still. Then came Jatu, old, sharp-eyed, wrapped in faded Ankara cloth. She climbed into the bus last, muttering angrily. These drivers won't leave person for road one day. She stopped. Her words died instantly. Her eyes locked onto the girl sitting in front. The colour drained slowly from her face. The plastic bag in her hand slipped to the floor. No, passengers nearby looked at her. Jatu's breathing became shaky. Her lips trembled violently. She stepped forward slowly. One step, then another. The closer she got, the colder the bus became. Passengers rubbed their arms. Someone shut the window. A young man frowned. Why cold suddenly? Jatu ignored everyone. Her eyes never left the girl. "Impossible," she whispered. Boy slowly turned her head. Their eyes met, and suddenly Jatu remembered. Years ago, rain, funeral drums, a small coffin, women crying loudly, Matu collapsing beside a grave, and the girl inside the coffin wearing that same pale blue dress. Jatu's knees nearly gave way. Her voice cracked. "Is this you, boy?" The entire bus became quiet. Even the conductor stopped shouting. Jatu stared harder, tears forming in her frightened eyes. Matu's daughter, her breathing quickened. Who died years ago? Silence, heavy, unnatural. Boy said nothing. She only stared at Jatu with eyes that looked far too empty for a living person. Then slowly, very slowly, she turned her head and looked at everyone behind her. The bus lights flickered once, twice. The driver suddenly struggled to breathe. A baby started screaming uncontrollably. Outside, the cemetery gate creaked open by itself. Whoosh! Boy vanished. Not slowly, not like smoke, not like a shadow. 1 second she was there. The next second, the seat was empty, gone. A loud screech exploded inside the bus. Passengers lost their minds instantly. She disappeared. Jesus Christ! Blood of God! People pushed each other violently, trying to escape. Someone crashed through the window. A woman fainted. Another passenger began praying at the top of his lungs. The conductor jumped out before the bus even stopped moving. The driver abandoned the steering wheel entirely and ran barefoot into the road. The bus rolled forward slightly before crashing into a roadside gutter. Then silence returned. Terrible silence. The abandoned bus sat beside the cemetery, with all its doors wide open, empty, waiting. And from somewhere deep inside the cemetery came the faint sound of a little girl laughing. That night, fear returned to the town. The city refused to sleep. Music thundered from a crowded nightclub, glowing with flashing red and blue lights. Cars lined outside the building, while groups of young people laughed loudly beneath the buzzing neon sign. Inside, Afro beats shook the walls. The DJ screamed excitedly into the microphone. "Tonight we no go sleep." The crowd roared back happily. Bodies moved wildly across the dance floor. Drinks spilled. Girls danced on elevated platforms. Smoke machines filled the air. Yet somehow, in the middle of all the noise and movement, boys stood completely still, near the far corner of the club, quiet, watching. She wore a black fitted dress that seemed too elegant for the chaotic place. Her smooth skin reflected softly under the flashing lights, and her calm expression never changed. People noticed her immediately. Men glanced repeatedly in her direction. Women whispered among themselves, but nobody approached her. Something about her felt wrong, not ugly, not dangerous, just wrong, like she did not belong among living people. Across the room, Senesi spotted her, tall, confident, already slightly drunk from expensive whiskey and attention from his friends. He stared for several seconds. "See beauty," he muttered. His friends turned to look. One of them frowned immediately. "That girl?" Senesi grinned. "Yes, now. She fine pass everybody here." Another friend shook his head slowly. "Be careful." Senesi laughed loudly. "Careful of wetting?" The friend lowered his voice. Strange women no good sometimes, especially ones way just stand like that. They looked again. Boy still hadn't moved, hadn't danced, hadn't touched a drink, just watching. Senesi dismissed the warning with a wave. You people fear too much. He adjusted his jacket confidently and walked toward her. The closer he got, the colder the air became. Even the music suddenly sounded distant, but he ignored it. Hi, he said smoothly. Boy looked at him. Her eyes were calm, unreadable. Senesi smiled wider. Why are you standing alone? For a brief second she said nothing. Then, softly, waiting for my friends. Her voice barely rose above the music. Yet somehow, he heard every word clearly. Senesi leaned closer. You've been waiting too long then. A faint smile touched her lips. Not warm, not happy. Just enough to make him curious. Within minutes, they were talking. Or rather, he was talking. She answered only when necessary. Short replies. Soft voice. No emotion. But somehow, Senesi became more interested with every second. As they left the club together, one of his friends noticed. The friend immediately stood up. Senesi. But the music swallowed his voice. Outside, the night air felt unusually cold. The streets were quieter now. As they drove through the sleeping town, Senesi tried keeping conversation alive. So, where your family day? Boy stared outside the car window. I live alone, she answered softly. A pause. But I visit them often. Something about the way she said it made Senesi grip the steering wheel tighter. Still, he forced a laugh. And your hobbies? Listening to music. She turned slowly toward him. And travelling to places. Again, that strange feeling crawled through his chest. Like something invisible was sitting in the back seat with them. But when he glanced behind, nothing was there. They arrived at his apartment building just after midnight. The compound was silent. No generator noise. No neighbours talking. Only the sound of their footsteps climbing the stairs. Inside the apartment, Senesi quickly switched on soft lights and relaxed music. The atmosphere became calm, warm, normal. Or at least, he tried to convince himself it was. Make yourself comfortable, he said. Boy sat gently on the edge of the bed. Perfect posture, perfect stillness. He smiled nervously. Do you want a drink? Later. Her eyes moved slowly around the room as if studying every corner carefully. Senesi sat beside her. You're welcome. Then softly he kissed her cheeks. Her skin was cold, not cool. Cold, like rainwater at midnight. A sharp shiver passed through him immediately. But before he could think too deeply about it, he stood up quickly. I'll be back. Let me freshen up first. She nodded once. Nothing more. Senesi entered the bathroom, turned on the tap, splashed water across his face. Then suddenly, the music outside stopped completely. Silence filled the apartment. His heartbeat quickened. Nepa again? He muttered nervously. He opened the bathroom door. The room was still lit. The music player remained on, but no sound came from it anymore. And the bed was empty. Boy was gone. Senesi froze. Hello? No answer. He checked the sitting room. Nothing. Kitchen? Nothing. Balcony? Nothing. His breathing became uneven. He rushed back to the bedroom and searched everywhere desperately. Closet, under the bed, bathroom again, window, stairs, outside. Nothing. No sound. No footsteps. No door opening. It was as if she had never entered the apartment at all. Then suddenly, he noticed something. The room had become freezing cold, and from somewhere very close came the faint sound of a girl humming softly. Senesi nearly collapsed. His shaking hands grabbed his phone immediately. "Mum," his voice cracked badly. "I'm coming over." He turned around repeatedly while speaking, fear swallowing him completely now. Something is not right. That was the exact moment he realized. Something terrible had entered his home and left whenever it wanted. The apartment lights flickered once, then twice, and somewhere inside the darkness, a woman laughed softly. Some people invite what they do not understand. Bright sun covered the town peacefully. Children ran across the park laughing loudly, while parents sat beneath shaded trees watching them. Nearby, teenage boys played football on a dusty field, shouting excitedly each time someone scored. Everything felt normal. Safe. Near the edge of the park, Boy sat alone on a wooden bench, still, silent, watching people pass by. She wore a simple white dress today, yet somehow looked untouched by the heat and dust around her. A group of girls approached her happily. Mamu, Sitta, and Adama. "Merry Christmas in advance," Mamu joked cheerfully. The girls greeted her warmly. Boy looked up slowly. "Hello?" Her voice remained soft and distant. Sitta smiled. "You're always alone. Come with us to the library." For a moment, Boy said nothing. Then quietly, "Okay." The girls exchanged excited looks and led her across the street toward the local library building. Inside, everything became quiet. Too quiet. Only the sound of pages turning and ceiling fans spinning slowly filled the room. The girls moved between shelves, searching for books, whispering and laughing softly among themselves. But Boy did not browse. She simply stood near the center aisle, motionless, eyes fixed ahead, as though staring at something nobody else could see. At the front desk, Mariama the librarian noticed her immediately. Her smile faded. Slowly, she stood up, walked closer. Her breathing changed. "No!" She stared harder. Fear entered her eyes. "Are you?" Her voice trembled badly now. "Matu's daughter?" The girls looked up in confusion. Mariama took another shaky step backward. "But you died." Silence swallowed the library. Boy slowly turned her head, looked at the girls, looked at the shelves. Then, whoosh, she vanished instantly. Books crashed loudly to the floor. The shelves began shaking violently. Children screamed. Someone ran into a table trying to escape. Mariama shouted and fled toward the exit in terror. Within seconds, panic swallowed the library completely. Outside, people gathered around the entrance asking questions, and for the first time, the entire town began whispering the same thing. Boy was real, and she was returning everywhere. Christmas carols echoed through the crowded shopping mall. On a day meant for joy, she returned again. The mall overflowed with life. Large Christmas decorations hung from every corner. Children laughed excitedly while carrying balloons and candy. Artificial snow sprayed across display windows. Music played cheerfully from loud speakers overhead. Yet among all the movement, Boy stood completely still at the entrance of a large clothing store. Beautiful, silent, unmoving. People glanced at her as they passed, then quickly looked away again. Something about her presence disturbed the air around her, like cold smoke hidden inside warm sunlight. Then came Bashir, friendly, talkative, full of confidence. He noticed her immediately, paused, then smiled. "You wait for somebody?" Boy looked at him calmly. "I'm waiting for my friends." Bashir laughed softly. "Then come shop small while you wait." A brief silence. Then she nodded once. Together, they entered the store. Inside, Christmas music continued playing softly overhead. Workers moved busily between customers. Bashir talked freely while walking beside her, but Boy answered only with short replies. Quiet, distant. "Choose anything you want for Christmas," he said excitedly. "No." Bashir chuckled awkwardly. "You like gifts?" Boy simply stared ahead. "She never asks. She never takes. But she always appears." Bashir continued shopping anyway. Pyjamas, chocolates, perfume. Then finally, a large teddy bear. "This one go fit you well," he said proudly. Boy only looked at him silently. No smile, no excitement. At the cashier's stand, the register beeped repeatedly as items were scanned. Then, suddenly, the cashier looked up. Miatta froze instantly. The smile disappeared from her face. Her hands began shaking. "Wait," her voice cracked. "Is this Boy?" Bashir frowned in confusion. Miatta stepped backward slowly. "Matu's daughter?" Her breathing became uneven. "You are supposed to be dead." The Christmas music cut off abruptly. The entire store fell silent. Bashir turned slowly toward Boy, confused, uneasy. Boy looked back at him calmly. Silence. Then, whoosh, she vanished. The teddy bear dropped from Bashir's hands immediately. People screamed. Children cried loudly. Shopping bags scattered across the floor. Security guards shouted while customers rushed toward the exits in panic. A shelf collapsed somewhere at the back of the store. Bashir stood frozen among the chaos, staring at the empty space where Boy had stood seconds earlier. His hands trembled violently. "Who?" His voice shook badly. "Who did I just shop with?" And now she was no longer a rumor. The whole town had seen her. Laughter echoed everywhere. Guests danced happily beneath bright golden decorations, while waiters rushed around carrying trays of food and drinks. It was supposed to be a perfect night. The MC stood proudly on stage, sweating with excitement. "If you know, say Love Sweet. Make some noise." The crowd exploded with cheers. Women ululated loudly. Men danced wildly. The bride laughed beautifully beside the groom as cameras flashed non-stop. Then, suddenly, whoosh! A cold wind swept through the hall. The decorations trembled violently. The chandeliers shook. Lights flickered once, twice. The music distorted strangely before cutting low. People stopped dancing slowly, confused. Then Boy entered. Silence spread across the hall immediately. She wore a beautiful white lace dress, simple, elegant. Her skin glowed softly beneath the flickering light, calm, still, beautiful enough to make the entire hall stare. But something about her presence felt deeply wrong, like death itself had walked into the celebration. Near the food section, Jatu saw her first. The old woman nearly dropped her drink. That girl, her hands trembled badly. Something no correct. The music stopped completely. Only silence remained. The bride slowly stepped forward, fear filling her eyes. "Boy," her voice shook. "But you died." The hall became colder. People exchanged nervous glances. "You should be resting." Boy said nothing. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and pointed directly at the groom. Tension rose instantly. The groom stumbled backward immediately. "Me?" Sweat formed across his forehead. "No, I don't know her." But his voice betrayed him. He looked terrified. A random auntie from the crowd pointed suddenly. "He knows her." People turned immediately. "Look, his face!" Murmuring spread rapidly through the hall. The bride's eyes filled with tears as she faced him. "What did you do to her?" The groom shook violently now. His breathing became uneven. Then finally, he broke. "It was an accident." Loud gasps filled the hall. The bride covered her mouth in horror. The groom collapsed to his knees. "I didn't mean to hurt her." His voice cracked painfully. "We argued that night." Tears streamed down his face. She fell. The entire hall listened in stunned silence. "I panicked." He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't even bury her properly." People stepped away from him in fear and disgust. The groom looked toward Boy with trembling eyes. "I need to see her parents." His voice became softer. "And confess everything." Close up, Boy stood silently crying. No anger, no screaming, just silent tears rolling down her face. For the first time, she looked human again. Not terrifying, not mysterious, just hurt. She slowly looked around the wedding hall, at the frightened crowd, at the crying bride, at the man who had hidden the truth for years. Then, whoosh, she vanished. The lights exploded briefly. Women screamed loudly. People ran toward the exits. Chairs crashed. The MC grabbed the microphone in panic. "Everybody go home and pray, oh." The wedding ended in complete chaos. Late night. The streets were empty. A man walked home alone, beneath weak streetlights. Quiet footsteps echoed behind him. Step, step, step. The man slowed nervously, then turned around slowly. Boy stood behind him, silent, watching him calmly. The man's lips trembled. "Boy," his voice barely came out. "Is this you?" For the first time in the entire town, Boy smiled, softly, sadly. Then she vanished into the darkness. Some secrets never stay buried forever. The truth may delay, but one day it always returns. Fear grows when guilt is hidden. Be careful how you treat people. Every action has consequences. Not every stranger is what they seem. Thank you for watching Tessa's stories. Like this video if it scared you. Comment which part shocked you the most. Subscribe for more. Share with your friends and family if you enjoyed the story.